On today's episode of You Asked, can certain videos on YouTube actually help fix burn-in on your OLED TV, or could they make things worse? We'll revisit the best TVs for watching sports, talk about how to record and watch sports if you've got a dumb TV in a spare room, and a quick run-through on the best picture settings for your new TV. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and this is You Asked, the show where I answer questions that you asked in hopes that I can help you and others with similar tech questions. If you've got a question for me, please email it to youasked@digitaltrends.com, and we'll see if your question gets picked to be answered on the show. First question comes in from JKB, who writes, "My LG OLED 55C8 started to show burn-in just as the warranty ran out." Figures. The extended warranty sold by Costco didn't help. Allstate blamed me for misusing the TV. We never adjusted the TV. It just looked great right out of the box, and we left it there. Yellow is the worst, but red, green, blue, and white all show the shadow to some extent. I just saw this video. He references a YouTube clip. I did not watch it past the instructions, and I'm skeptical about this video's ability to do any good, and I'm concerned that it may further damage my screen, which is still useful, albeit somewhat annoying. What say you? What say I is that there's actually a lot to unpack here. First, though, let me say that I'm sorry that you're having trouble. There is perhaps nothing more frustrating and disheartening than going to seek help and being told that the trouble is your fault. I mean, sometimes we are responsible, even though we didn't know we were doing anything, but that doesn't make it any easier to deal with. Second, I'm not sure that what I see in your picture here is actually burn-in. There is definitely an issue here. You shouldn't be seeing that discoloration. That's not how this TV is supposed to look. But what I'm noticing is that the discoloration doesn't seem to have a discernible pattern to it. Typically, burn-in has at least a recognizable shape to it. It tends to be localized. And in extreme examples, you can clearly make out characters or specific shapes, like the FOX in Fox News or CNN, or even the Weather Channel logo. Furthermore, it's pretty rare to see burn-in at the center of the screen. The kind of objects displayed on an OLED that cause burn-in are typically toward the edges of the TV. What I see in this photo is sort of an amorphous blob right in the center, and I'm struggling to imagine what kind of programming could cause it to A, be in the center, and B, have no real identifiable shape. I mean, honestly, what it looks like is that the TV took some kind of impact toward the center and the pixels have sustained some damage. But even that scenario seems suspect to me because it would take a big object to cause that kind of damage. I'd still expect to see more significant damage at the point of impact and maybe some cursory damage around it. Anyway, there's no smoking gun here that points to burn-in. Those pixels are, however, clearly worn out for some reason. Now, as for the YouTube video that you linked to, that video is not going to do further damage. All it does is provide a uniform workout for the OLED pixels, shifting through colors at various brightness intensities. It's not going to make anything worse any more than just watching regular content. I am not, however, super optimistic that it's going to help either, but since there's little to no risk involved, you might as well try. I will say, though, for whatever it's worth, that warranty or insurance claim adjusters really don't have anything to point to here, suggesting that you abused the TV. And while I'm sure they would disagree, I do feel it's incumbent upon them to prove that you don't have a rightful claim. As far as I'm concerned, they don't have that proof. It's pure speculation. I don't know if that's going to help you get what you want, but perhaps it may give you some peace of mind at least. David writes in noting that football season is upon us, and thus, so too is the annual battle with others in his family for the living room TV. He's got an old, not smart Philips 50-inch TV in another room that he's happy to go watch the games on, but he'd like to be able to record over-the-air games and watch them later. He recalls an Amazon device that would work with a Fire TV stick for recording and playback and wonders if there's something else out there that would work like that. Yes, David, as a matter of fact, I have just the thing. Now, this device comes from a previous sponsor, but I have always personally recommended this product Just to be clear, this is not a sponsored placement. This is my personal recommendation to you. I would get a Tablo DVR and then some inexpensive smart set-top box or streaming dongle. Take your pick, Apple TV, Roku box or stick, Amazon Fire TV box or stick, whatever you like. Tablo's app works on most of the major platforms. What you do is connect an antenna to this Tablo box, and then that box connects to your Wi-Fi, and you can tune into anything over the air and watch it live, or you can record and watch later. You can even record 2 different stations at once, or watch one and record another. And it doesn't just record over the air stuff, you can record programming on free ad-supported TV or FAST channels as well. Also, you can watch the content that you record on any phone, tablet, or TV that has access to the Tablo app from anywhere. All you need is an internet connection since you're streaming it. And by the way, there's no subscription involved. Just buy the hardware and enjoy. Stu writes, football season is here, and I'm sure there are a lot of people like me that are most concerned with how their TVs look for sporting events. I know you've mentioned issues before with motion and compression, etc. when it comes to sports on TV, but what are a couple of TVs you would recommend if sporting events, especially American football, were the main reasons one was buying the TV? Maybe a top-end model, a middle-range model, and a budget buy for, bedrooms or an extra room. Okay, so in full transparency, I picked this question to answer because Stu is right. It is football season, and this is a very relevant topic with broad implications, but also because it's a good example of the kind of question that I've attempted to answer in a dedicated video that I've already made. So if you have a question that you want my help with, my suggestion is for you to first do a quick Google search or, pick whatever search engine you prefer. But in this case, that search might look like digital trends, best TV for sports. Do that and this video will pop up. I kindly request that you watch that video. And if after watching it, you still have questions, send those questions in for You Asked consideration. Now, because of how search engines and video titles and metadata work, if I've answered a question within this video series specifically, You Asked, it may not pop up. But if it is a popular enough question, hopefully I've already made a video on it. And if I haven't, well, I'll see that question a lot and I'll try to make a full video on it, which leads me nicely into this next topic. Regarding a batch of questions I've seen come in recently about picture settings. Here are a couple of recent examples. Mike wrote, I have a Vizio 75-inch TV and was wondering what are the calibration settings for it, or do you have a website that I could go to for those? And then Kevin writes, I took your advice and picked up the new 98-inch TCL QM851G. I was wondering if you by chance offered up your settings to get the most out of the TV. Thanks in advance for your help. Sincerely, Kevin. Okay, guys, so in a few minutes here, I'm gonna show you exactly what I do to every TV that comes in for a review. They are steps that anyone can follow, and the results will almost always provide a better picture than what you'll get if you do nothing at all. And it's a great jumping off point if you want to really dig in and fine tune your TV. First though, I want to clarify a few things and explain why I will never publish calibration settings for folks to replicate at home. And for those of you who have heard this before, well, I think it bears repeating for those who have not. Please understand this. Display or TV calibration, by its definition, requires 2 things: a target and the means to measure your efforts toward hitting that target. In order to calibrate a TV, you need to know what you're doing for sure, but you must have a measurement device like a colorimeter and or a spectrophotometer. You need a pattern generator or pattern source and software that can take the readings from your colorimeter or spectro and plot them on a graph relative to your target. Most folks don't have the know-how or the expensive equipment to calibrate a TV, hence the existence of the display calibration profession. Folks, I'm really not trying to be pedantic here. I'm drawing that distinction because, well, out of respect for calibrators, but also to clarify that anyone who publishes calibration settings without actually using measurement equipment to get them, or comes out to your house with a disc and maybe some blue filter glasses, they're not providing a calibration. Now, to be clear, it is possible to make a TV look great without performing a calibration. But there is a point at which you must stop messing around with things because you run the risk of doing more harm than good. And I mentioned that because that point at which you should stop adjusting settings is at the white balance, grayscale, and color calibration area. I will not publish actual calibration settings for any of those points because every TV is different. So what I do to a review sample here is not what should be done for your TV. For those adjustments, you have to measure, adjust, measure again, rinse and repeat until you have reached your target. A lot of folks don't know that once you start changing those deeper settings, you make one adjustment here and it impacts another adjustment over here. It's a complicated dance, calibrating is, which is why it takes hours, not minutes, to perform. Now, with those clarifications made for posterity out of the way, I understand that what most folks want is just some help getting the best picture they can out of their TV using resources they do have at their disposal. So to that end, let me guide you through what I do with every TV that comes in for review and for any friend or family member who wants my help if I come over to visit. This is what I'd do if I came to your house with nothing but your remote control in hand, so you can definitely do it too. Okay, so we have the LG C4 OLED TV here, and I've done nothing to this TV yet. You'll get to see me do this in real time. Now, every TV has a different menu system, and each platform calls different settings, different things, but I'll help you out with decoding that along the way best as I can. And hey, if you want me to do this for every TV brand, give this video a like and drop a comment telling me so right now, and I'll do it if the interest is high enough. Okay, so the first thing I recommend doing is finding the eco mode and turning it off. I know, we all want to do our part to reduce energy consumption, and I'm all for that, but this is about getting the best from the TV, and the eco mode on most TVs caps the TV's performance significantly. So I have to start by turning this feature off. Now, again, every TV is going to be different. You're going to have to do some hunting here. So let's see where we have to go in this LG TV. Sometimes it can be as simple as changing the picture mode or picture preset, but what I want to do here is look for an eco settings submenu, a sort of master eco setting that we can turn off, because even if we change the picture mode away from the eco picture mode, there may still be some other settings in the background limiting the TV's performance. Okay, so this LG TV is a great example of that. We can switch out of auto power save as a picture preset, but that other eco mode would still be going. So glad we turned that off. Okay, now we want to select a picture preset. That right there is going to make the biggest difference in the world. I'm always going to recommend something like cinema or movie or even filmmaker mode. The reason I suggest these particular presets as opposed to standard or vivid or sports is because they correct the color temperature to the slightly warmer setting, something that's close to what we call D65. You don't have to have it that way if you don't want to. You can always change the color temperature later, but the other benefit of going to one of these modes is that it's going to turn off motion smoothing, which is something else that I recommend. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and go with cinema because that's a good example of a time when motion smoothing may not be turned off by default. But once we select a picture mode that is not standard or vivid, I want to check and see if motion smoothing is turned on. In an LG TV, that'll be under clarity. Sometimes you'll see this menu as motion. It can be any number of different things. Here I see that real cinema is on. This is a particular setting for LG TVs that aids in good 24p production. But true motion is set to cinematic movement, and I don't want that on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off in this particular case. Now on other TVs, you may have the option to adjust de-judder and de-blur. You can play around with those to get a picture that you like, motion that you like, but a good starting point is just to turn them off entirely. Now, often the movie mode or cinema or definitely filmmaker mode is going to be too dark in SDR. So your cable, satellite, that kind of programming, any of the free TV streaming stuff that you look at may end up being too dark. So if you do find the picture to look a little dark for that SDR content, you can go into the brightness settings and turn up the brightness. Now, if you have an OLED TV, it might say OLED pixel brightness, or it might say OLED brightness, something like that. With mini LED TVs, it may refer to the LED backlight system. Try to avoid adjusting the brightness setting and instead focus on the backlight or the OLED pixel brightness. Now, earlier I mentioned that some folks are not going to enjoy the warmer color temperature, and if you count yourself in that camp, you can go into the color settings and search for color temperature settings. In this LG, there's a dedicated color temperature setting, and it actually gives you a slider to adjust. Other TVs like TCL and Hisense will give you 3 or 4 different options. In this particular case, I'd probably just click around, maybe reduce this down to 0 and see if that cooler color temperature suits my eyes. Maybe that's a little bit too far in the blue direction, and so I might try and pick a happy medium, but you're basically going to want to adjust this to taste. It's more important that you understand what it does. As you go to a cooler color temperature, you're going to jack up the blue in the whites. It has a crisper look. It tends to look brighter because of the way blue wavelengths work. Technically, it's not accurate, but we're not going for accuracy here. We're going for something that you like. Now, here's the trick. We have just adjusted things for SDR on this TV, and we can apply it to all inputs. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. However, not all TVs will apply the settings to every input or even to all the different apps. And so it's entirely possible you may need to go into the apps that you watch and go into the HDMI inputs that you use and repeat this process. And that's just for SDR. Now we need to deal with HDR. So for me, the easiest thing to do for adjusting HDR is to go into YouTube and pick an HDR video. I've got one queued up here. We'll get that started. I'll go ahead and press pause on that. And then I'll go into the picture settings because now we're going to need to adjust the HDR picture mode. As we see here, it's in auto power save again. So once again, we go into settings, into picture. We want to look at our picture presets. It's still in auto power save, so I can choose cinema. Cinema home is going to be a little bit brighter, a little bit cooler. Color temperature, filmmaker mode is going to be very, very strict to adhering to the creator's intent. Often that is not what the preference is from the user. So for this, I'll probably just go cinema. And then from there, you really don't need to mess with the brightness because the brightness will already be maxed out. That being the case, you can adjust color temperature if you want, as we did in SDR, or you can double check to make sure that motion smoothing is either not turned on at all or set to the level that you prefer. The thing about the cinema, movie, or filmmaker modes is that usually your motion smoothing is turned off. That's just not always the case, so you definitely want to double check. And again, that's going to suit HDR for YouTube. Go into another app and pull up some HDR content and see if you need to make those same adjustments again. Same goes for your HDMI inputs. And finally, we need to deal with settings for Dolby Vision. A lot of these streaming services do Dolby Vision for their HDR. So just as we used YouTube HDR videos to get our HDR settings, we're going to use Dolby Vision, in this case on Netflix. You could also use Disney Plus or HBO Max if you subscribe to a tier that offers them. Start playing the content so that the TV actually goes into Dolby Vision. There we go. We see the Dolby Vision logo up in the upper right. I'm going to go ahead and pause and go into picture settings. And lucky for me, it's intuited that since I selected Cinema Home for HDR, I might want something similar for Dolby Vision. That's not always going to be the case. That's why you definitely need to double check. Here I have the option between Cinema Home and Filmmaker mode. Now, a lot of TVs offer a Dolby Vision Dark or a Dolby Vision Bright If that's the case, understand that Dolby Vision Bright will be a bit brighter. It's also going to have motion smoothing turned on. So you'll want to go in and turn off the motion smoothing if you don't want it. Otherwise, you don't need to mess with the brightness at all because the brightness will be maxed out for HDR. And once again, if you want to adjust the color temperature, feel free to go in and do that to your preference. Okay, so quick recap. You'll need to do picture settings for SDR, HDR, and Dolby Vision. And in order to do that, you'll need to pull up SDR, HDR, and Dolby Vision content, either off of a Blu-ray disc or a streaming app, your cable or Apple TV, whatever it is. Make sure you're looking at that content type. You may have to do this a few times for different HDMI inputs or different apps. That's up to the TV, and you'll need to do some investigation to find out whether the picture settings you're making carry over to other apps and other HDMI inputs, or if you're gonna have a long haul ahead of you and do a lot of work. Once you go into that particular content type, I suggest using the movie, cinema, pro, or filmmaker mode as a start. That's gonna warm up your color temperature, usually disable your motion interpolation or motion smoothing settings, and it's gonna disable a bunch of extra stuff running in the background that you probably don't want. That's the easiest path toward getting most of what you want. Then you can make small refinements. Some people do not care for the warm color temperature, so you may go into your color temperature settings and cool it off. Some people will want a brighter picture in SDR than what is provided for with those movie or cinema modes because they kind of assume that you're in a dark environment. You probably aren't. So go ahead and turn up either the OLED pixels, OLED light, or mini LED or LED backlight setting. Try to avoid just the blanket brightness setting in order to brighten up that picture, elevate that average picture level without actually messing with the contrast. Sometimes turning up that brightness setting is going to mess with your black levels, and you don't want that. And that's it. You do not want to dig into 2-point white balance or 11-point white balance or 20-point white balance. You don't want to start messing with color coordinates. That kind of thing needs to be reserved for folks who have measurement instruments to figure out what it is that they're doing and how close they're getting to a target. I hope that was helpful, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm curious, how many of you are gearing up for football season and looking to buy a new TV right now because you are hardcore into American football? Anyone else sad that summer is drawing to a close, or are you all excited for fall and pumpkin spice everything? Leave me a comment down below. Please like this video. Just smash that thumbs up button right now. Subscribe for more. I'll see you on the next one. And until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. I feel like this is just way too much, but that's that.